I can still replay that night in my mind, the one where everything I thought I knew came crashing down. It was supposed to be a celebration, our 10th wedding anniversary, a milestone I had been planning to make unforgettable. But life, it seems, had other plans for me. We had always loved that restaurant, small, cozy, and tucked away from the bustle of the city. It held a special place in my heart. It was the same spot where I had proposed to Jessica all those years ago. I had reserved our favorite table by the window. Everything was ready. The gift, the heartfelt letter I'd spent a week writing, and my head full of memories of the good times we'd shared. I wanted this evening to be a symbol of how far we'd come, despite the challenges. Jessica had called earlier to let me know she'd be late because of work. She often had unpredictable meetings as part of her marketing job, so I didn't think much of it. I decided to arrive early, enjoying a glass of wine in the warm ambience that always felt so comforting. But as soon as I saw her walk through the door, my confidence in our happiness began to shatter. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a man I'd never seen before. He had his arm lightly on hers, and the way they moved together felt far too intimate for coworkers. My first thought was that there had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe he was a client or a work partner. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but as they settled into a table across the restaurant, it became painfully clear that this was no business meeting. Their smiles, the way they leaned toward each other, the soft laughter, it was all far too personal. A cold wave of realization swept over me. I sat there gripping the letter I had written for her, trying to keep my emotions in check. I decided to wait, to listen, to figure out what was really going on. As much as it hurt, I needed to know the truth. Their conversation was quiet, but not quiet enough. I managed to catch fragments of what they were saying. "You're incredible, Tom," she said with a smile I had once thought belonged only to me. I can't remember the last time I felt this alive. Those words cut through me like a knife. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would burst out of my chest. What I heard after that only confirmed my worst fears. She was talking about me, about us. "He's a good man," she said, her tone devoid of the warmth I used to know. "But I just don't feel the spark anymore. It's been gone for a while." I couldn't take it any longer. I stood up, the letter still clenched in my hand, and walked toward their table. When she saw me, her face drained of color. She tried to say something, but I placed the letter down on the table between them before she could. "This is what I wrote for our anniversary," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I hope you like it. But don't worry, you won't have to hear from me again." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving them in stunned silence. Outside, the cool night air hit me, but it did little to calm the fire burning in my chest. That night, everything I thought I knew about my life fell apart, and I realized this was only the beginning of a story that would change everything. As I walked away from that restaurant, my mind raced with questions. What had gone wrong? Was it me? Was I blind to the signs? The chill of the night air didn't bother me as much as the emptiness I felt inside. That place, the memories, the love I'd always thought was unshakable, but now it felt like a lie. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, the same streets where we used to take long walks, dreaming about our future. I pulled over at a park we used to visit back when things were simpler. I sat on a cold bench, staring at the stars, searching for clarity in the chaos that had become my life. Her words echoed in my head. "I can't remember the last time I felt this alive." That sentence played on repeat like a broken record. What had I done wrong? I worked hard to provide for us, to give her the life she deserved. I thought we were happy. Sure, we'd had our ups and downs like any couple, but I thought we'd always weathered the storms together. Clearly, I was wrong. I stayed there for hours, trying to piece together every moment that might have hinted at this betrayal. The late nights at work, the sudden need to find herself, the constant texting always brushed off as just work stuff. The picture was starting to come together, and I hated what I saw. I had been so naive, so trusting. When I finally drove home, the house felt different. The same house where we'd built our life together, where we'd laughed, fought, and dreamed, now felt hollow. I walked in expecting silence, but instead, I found Jessica sitting in the living room. She must have rushed home after I left because she was still in the same outfit, her face pale, her eyes wide with what I could only describe as panic. "We need to talk," she said softly, her voice trembling. She wasn't the confident, composed woman I had seen at the restaurant with him. Now she looked small, almost fragile. I stood there staring at her. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to give her a chance to explain, even though I already knew the truth. The other part of me wanted to walk right past her, to pack my things and leave without another word. But I couldn't do either, not yet. Talk, I finally said, my voice colder than I intended. You mean like the conversation you were having with Tom tonight? Her eyes widened, and for a split second, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then she tried to recover, shaking her head. It's not what you think. I cut her off. Don't insult me by pretending I didn't see what I saw or hear what I heard. Just be honest with me for once. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her silence was louder than any confession could have been. I walked over to the couch and sat down, keeping a safe distance between us. How long? I asked. My voice was steady, but inside I was falling apart. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. A few months, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Months? While I was planning this anniversary, pouring my heart into that letter, she was with him. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Why? I asked, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay composed. What did I do wrong? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might actually feel guilty. It's not about you, she said. It's me. I felt stuck, like something was missing. Missing? I repeated, my anger bubbling to the surface. You mean the life we built together? The years we spent supporting each other? The plans we made? That's what was missing. She didn't answer, and her silence spoke volumes. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. The room felt suffocating, and I needed air. I can't do this right now, I said, grabbing my jacket. I need time to think. Wait, she said, standing up too. Please, don't go. Let's talk about this. But I couldn't, not then. Without another word, I walked out the door and into the night, leaving her alone with her tears. As I drove away, I realized I had no idea where I was going, but one thing was certain. Everything in my life had changed. This wasn't just the end of the night. It was the beginning of the end of us. The streets were quiet as I drove aimlessly, my mind consumed by 1,000 swirling thoughts. How could someone you trust so deeply turn into a stranger overnight? The Jessica I knew, the woman I married, was no longer the same person. Or maybe she had changed long ago, and I had been too blind to notice. I ended up at a motel on the edge of town, one of those places that smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. It wasn't glamorous, but it didn't matter. I needed somewhere to think, somewhere to feel the weight of this reality, without her presence suffocating me. I checked in, collapsed onto the stiff bed, and stared at the cracked ceiling. Sleep wasn't an option. My thoughts wouldn't let me rest. Her words replayed in my head on a loop. It's not about you. It's me. What a cliché, the kind of thing people say when they don't want to own up to their actions. What had been missing? Was it excitement? Passion? Did I really bore her so much that she felt the need to find it in someone else? Hours passed, and I found myself scrolling through my phone. I opened my messages and stared at her name. For a second, I wanted to text her, to demand more answers, but I knew I couldn't, not yet. I needed to gather myself first. Instead, I scrolled through our old photos, vacations, holidays, lazy Sundays on the couch. Each picture felt like a dagger to the heart. How could those moments have been real if she was capable of this? Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I drifted off into a restless sleep. But even my dreams offered no escape. I kept seeing her with him, laughing, smiling, whispering sweet nothings. I woke up drenched in sweat, my chest heavy with anger and pain. The next morning, I knew I couldn't avoid reality any longer. I needed clarity, and I wasn't going to get it sitting in a dingy motel room. So, I went back home. As much as I dreaded facing Jessica, I couldn't let her dictate the narrative of what came next. This was my life too. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was still there. For a moment, I debated turning around and leaving again, but I shook off the thought. I had to confront this head-on. Stepping inside, I immediately felt the tension in the air. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a mug of coffee in front of her. Her face lit up with a strange mix of relief and nervousness when she saw me. "You're back," she said softly, as though she wasn't sure how to approach me. I didn't respond. I took off my jacket, hung it on the chair, and sat across from her. The silence between us was deafening, but I wasn't about to be the first to speak. If she wanted to fix this, or even explain it, she needed to be the one to start. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. For everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I let out a bitter laugh. Well, congratulations, Jessica. You've done a fantastic job of doing exactly that. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Why him? I asked, my voice cold and direct. Of all people, why him? She hesitated, looking down at her hands. I don't know. He was just there. He made me feel special, like I mattered. And I didn't. I shot back, my tone sharper than I intended. I've spent 10 years of my life trying to make you happy, Jessica. Was that not enough for you? It's not that simple, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't mean for this to happen. That's the thing, I said, leaning forward. It didn't just happen. You made a choice. Every text, every meeting, every time you looked at him instead of me, you chose this. She couldn't argue with that, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. Regret doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't rebuild trust. What happens now? She asked after a long pause, her voice trembling. I don't know, I admitted. But I can tell you one thing. It's not going to be the same. Not after this. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the way she smiled at him, the way she spoke about me like I was just some placeholder in her life, and the sympathy vanished. I need time, I said, standing up. Time to figure out if I can ever trust you again, because right now, I don't even recognize the person sitting in front of me. I walked away before she could respond, heading upstairs to the bedroom. Our bedroom, the room that now felt like a battlefield. As I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the neatly made sheets, I realized that this was only the beginning. The cracks in our foundation had turned into a gaping hole, and I had no idea if it could ever be repaired. The rest of the day passed like a blur. The house felt eerily quiet, as if it too had sensed the rupture in our lives. Jessica stayed downstairs, likely trying to give me space. I stayed in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing in particular. The silence between us wasn't just awkward, it was deafening. Every corner of that room reminded me of her. The framed wedding photo on the nightstand, the soft throw blanket she'd insisted on buying, even the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. It all felt suffocating now. It was like living in a shrine to a love that no longer existed. As the hours dragged on, I wrestled with a million emotions. Anger, sadness, confusion, and most frustrating of all, a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this could somehow be fixed. But how do you repair something that's been so thoroughly shattered? By evening, hunger forced me downstairs. Jessica was still in the kitchen, now staring blankly at her untouched coffee. When she saw me, she straightened up, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something, but I walked past her to the fridge without a word. I wasn't ready for another conversation. Not yet. You should eat, she said softly after a moment, her voice hesitant. I'm fine, I muttered, grabbing a bottle of water. No, you're not, she replied, surprising me with her sudden boldness. Neither of us are. I stopped in my tracks, turning to face her. What do you want me to say, Jessica? That everything's fine? That we can just sweep this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen? Because I can't do that. I won't. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she nodded, looking down at her hands. I know I've ruined everything. I wanted to say something cutting, something that would make her feel even a fraction of the pain she caused me, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I left her there and went back upstairs, leaving my dinner untouched. The conversation wasn't over, but I wasn't ready to have it yet. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of her moving around downstairs. I stayed in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long we could go on like this. The thought of confronting her again felt exhausting, but the thought of ignoring it felt worse. Eventually, I dragged myself out of bed, showered, and got dressed. When I came downstairs, she was sitting at the dining table, a stack of papers in front of her. At first, I thought they were divorce papers, and my heart sank. But when I got closer, I realized it was a list of therapists, their names and numbers neatly written out in her handwriting. I want to fix this, she said, looking up at me. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were pleading. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try. For us. For us. I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. Jessica, the only thing you were thinking about when you made your choices was yourself. Now suddenly it's about us. She flinched at my words, but didn't look away. You're right. I was selfish, but I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm serious. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to gauge her sincerity. The old me, the one who trusted her implicitly, might have believed her, but now I wasn't sure what to believe. You think therapy is going to fix this? I asked, crossing my arms. A few sessions and what? We'll go back to normal. Pretend like none of this happened. No, she said quickly. I don't expect that. I know it's not that simple, but I don't want to give up on us without trying. Her words sounded good, but they felt hollow. She was saying all the right things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more about easing her guilt than saving our marriage. I don't know, Jessica, I said finally, running a hand through my hair. Right now, I don't even know if there's an us to save. The words hung heavy in the air, and for the first time, I saw her truly break. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. It was the kind of raw emotion I hadn't seen from her in years, and it should have moved me, but all I felt was numb. I turned and walked out the door, needing space to clear my head. As I drove aimlessly again, I realized that her tears didn't mean what they used to. They didn't inspire me to comfort her or to try harder. Instead, they felt like a reminder of everything we'd lost. Later that day, I found myself in a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I needed to be somewhere neutral, away from the house, away from her. Sitting in the corner with a cup of coffee, I finally let myself think about what I wanted, what I needed. For so long, my life had revolved around Jessica, around making her happy. But where had that left me? Betrayed, broken, alone. A thought crept into my mind, one I wasn't ready to confront yet. Maybe this wasn't just the end of our marriage. Maybe it was a chance for a new beginning for me. As I sat there staring out the window, I realized that the path forward wasn't clear yet. But one thing was certain. I couldn't go back to the way things were. Too much had changed, and there was no undoing it. What happened next would depend on her actions, her willingness to not just say the right things, but to do them. But even then, I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. The weight of her betrayal was too heavy, and I wasn't sure if it was something I could or should carry anymore. I didn't go back home that night. Instead, I stayed out, driving aimlessly once again until the streets grew darker and emptier. I ended up pulling into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. The neon open sign buzzed faintly, and the place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s, but it felt like a safe space, somewhere I could sit and think without feeling the weight of her presence. I ordered a coffee and barely touched it as I sat in the corner booth, staring out the window. My mind was a storm of emotions. Anger, sadness, resentment, confusion. I replayed every conversation Jessica and I had in the months leading up to this disaster. Were there signs I missed? Clues I ignored? Or had she just gotten really good at hiding her secrets? The letter I'd written for her sat in my mind like a cruel joke. I had poured my heart into it, believing it would be the highlight of our anniversary. Instead, it had become the punctuation mark on a chapter of betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stayed at the diner until dawn, when the sun began creeping over the horizon. As I walked back to my car, I realized I couldn't keep running away. Avoiding the situation wouldn't make it disappear. If anything, it only delayed the inevitable. I had to face Jessica and figure out what came next, no matter how much it hurt. By the time I arrived home, the house was quiet. For a moment, I wondered if she had left, but her car was still in the driveway. When I stepped inside, I saw her curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and tear-streaked. She must have been waiting for me, but at some point, exhaustion took over. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of pity for her, but it quickly dissolved as the memory of her laughter with him resurfaced in my mind. I couldn't afford to let my emotions cloud the reality of what had happened. I closed the door softly, and the sound startled her awake. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and she quickly sat up, the blanket falling away. "You're back," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "I never said I wouldn't come back," I replied, my tone flat. I walked past her and into the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water. She followed me, hesitant but determined. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, standing in the doorway. Talk about what? I said, turning to face her. About how you lied to me, how you betrayed me, or how you've been cheating on me for months while I was too stupid to notice. She winced at my words, but didn't look away. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I've hurt you more than I can ever make up for. But I need you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Fix this, Jessica? You don't just fix something like this. You broke us. You broke me. And now you think a few apologies and a list of therapists is going to make everything okay. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time I didn't feel the slightest twinge of sympathy. I don't know what else to do, she said, her voice cracking. I made a terrible mistake, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life, but I don't want to lose you. I stared at her, my anger warring with my exhaustion. You already lost me the moment you decided to be with him. The moment you looked at another man and thought he could give you something I couldn't. She took a shaky step forward, reaching out as if to touch me, but I stepped back. The distance between us felt more than physical. It was a chasm she had created with her choices. I can't promise you anything right now, I said, my voice low but firm. I need time to figure out if I can even look at you without seeing what you've done. She nodded, her tears falling freely now. Take all the time you need. Just don't give up on us, please. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned and went upstairs, shutting the door to the bedroom behind me. I needed space, and I wasn't going to let her guilt or her tears rush me into forgiving her. This wasn't something that could be undone with words or promises. Later that day, I decided to take action, not for her, but for myself. I couldn't let her control the narrative of what happened. I needed clarity, and that meant finding out everything. If she wasn't going to be completely honest with me, I'd find the truth on my own. I started by going through our phone records. It didn't take long to find his number showing up repeatedly over the past few months. Late at night, during her so-called work meetings, even on weekends when she claimed to be out with friends. The evidence was there, plain as day. My hands shook as I stared at the list of calls and messages. Each one felt like another stab to the heart. But I wasn't done. I needed more. I needed to know just how deep this betrayal went. I reached out to a friend who worked in IT, someone I knew could help me dig deeper. It wasn't something I was proud of, but I didn't care anymore. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to sit around waiting for Jessica to give them to me. As I waited for him to get back to me, I felt a strange sense of resolve. This wasn't about revenge or anger anymore. It was about reclaiming control of my life, about finding the truth and deciding what I wanted to do with it. Whatever I uncovered next, I knew one thing for sure. There was no going back, not for her and not for me. This was the turning point, and the decisions I made in the coming days would define the rest of my life. The waiting was the hardest part. I sat in the silence of my bedroom, phone in hand, as my friend dug through the information I'd asked him to find. I told myself this wasn't about being vindictive. It was about knowing the truth, every detail, every moment. I couldn't let Jessica keep pieces of this hidden from me. If she had the audacity to betray me, then I deserved to know exactly how far it went. The text finally came late that night. My friend, Matt, had pieced together what he could. His message was short, but carried the weight of a wrecking ball. Call me. You need to hear this. My stomach churned as I dialed his number. When he answered, his tone was serious. Man, I'm sorry to say this, but it's worse than you think. I sat down, gripping the edge of the bed. Just tell me. She's been texting this guy, Tom, almost daily for months. And they're not just casual conversations. It's graphic. There are photos too. From her. From him. I clenched my jaw, my grip on the phone tightening. What kind of photos? Matt hesitated, clearly not wanting to go into detail, but I pressed him. Matt, I need to know. He sighed. It's explicit. Let's leave it at that. She's been sending him stuff when she claimed to be working late, even while you were home. And there's more. More. My voice cracked, and I hated the vulnerability it revealed. She booked a hotel room with him 3 times that I could confirm. Same hotel, same room number. And get this, they used your joint account to pay for it. The words hit me like a freight train. Not only had she betrayed me emotionally and physically, but she'd also used our shared finances to fund her affair. It was as if every shred of dignity I had left was being systematically stripped away. Thanks, Matt, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I owe you one. Take care of yourself, man, he replied before hanging up. I sat in the dark for what felt like hours, my mind racing. Every piece of information Matt had given me replayed in my head, each detail cutting deeper than the last. I thought about the hotel, the photos, the lies she told so effortlessly. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a calculated, ongoing betrayal. The next morning, I didn't bother hiding my anger. I went downstairs, and Jessica was in the kitchen again, looking as if she hadn't slept. When she saw me, she opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Stop," I said, my voice cold. "Don't say another word." Her face paled. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I echoed, laughing bitterly. "Let's start with the texts, Jessica. The photos. The hotel rooms. Does any of that ring a bell?" Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, her hands trembling. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything," I said, my voice rising. "I know about the months of messages, the nights you spent with him, and the fact that you used our money to pay for it." She looked like she was going to collapse. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Don't you dare," I snapped. "Don't you dare act like this was some accident. You made a choice, over and over again, to lie to me, to betray me, to humiliate me. And now you want to act like you're the victim?" Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. "I'll pay you back," she said desperately. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." "You can't make this right," I said, my voice breaking. "You've destroyed everything. And for what? Some cheap thrill? Was it worth it, Jessica? Was he worth throwing away 10 years of our lives?" She sobbed, shaking her head. "I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking." I laughed bitterly. "Well, I hope you had fun, because now you're going to live with the consequences." I walked out of the house, slamming the door behind me. I needed space, clarity, and a plan. I called a lawyer that afternoon. I didn't know if I was ready to file for divorce, but I needed to know my options. The idea of staying in a marriage built on lies felt unbearable, but the thought of tearing everything apart was equally terrifying. The lawyer was direct and professional. "If she's used your joint finances for the affair, you'll have a strong case for financial misconduct," he explained. "Do you have evidence?" "Yes," I said, "plenty." "Good," he said. "Take your time, but understand that the longer this drags on, the harder it will be emotionally. If you want to protect yourself, you need to act decisively." His words stuck with me long after the call ended. Act decisively, but how? Every decision felt monumental, and the weight of it all was crushing me. When I returned home that evening, Jessica was waiting for me in the living room. She looked exhausted, her eyes red and puffy from crying, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I couldn't. "I know I've ruined everything," she said quietly. "But please, let me fix this." I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "Fix this, Jessica? You can't undo what you've done. The trust is gone. The respect is gone. What's left?" She didn't answer. Instead, she broke down in tears, collapsing onto the couch. I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. My heart was too broken to feel anything but anger and disappointment. "I need time," I said finally, my voice cold. "And while I figure out what I want, you need to figure out how you're going to live with yourself." I left her there, sobbing into her hands, and went upstairs. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. The Jessica I thought I knew was gone, and I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive the woman who had taken her place. The next few days passed in a haze. I avoided Jessica as much as possible, burying myself in work and taking long drives just to escape the suffocating tension at home. The house, once filled with warmth and memories, now felt like a battlefield. Every glance, every silence between us, was a reminder of the chasm that had formed. Jessica tried to reach out, but I kept my distance. Every time she opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, it only made my anger simmer closer to the surface. I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't sure I ever would be. One night, I came home late and found her sitting at the dining table, a glass of wine in front of her, untouched. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes red and swollen. "You've barely been here," she said softly. "I don't know how to be here," I replied bluntly, taking off my jacket. "Not with you." Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to see her reaction. I headed upstairs, locking myself in the guest room that I'd been using as my makeshift sanctuary. I needed space, and for now, it was the only way I could keep from losing my composure entirely. The next morning, I woke up to an email notification. It was from the private investigator I had hired after talking to my lawyer. Attached was a file containing photos, messages, and hotel receipts. all meticulously documented. Seeing the evidence laid out so clearly, so undeniably, made my chest tighten. This was no misunderstanding, no exaggeration. Jessica had made her choices, and the proof was staring me in the face. I forwarded the file to my lawyer without hesitation. It was time to protect myself, even if I wasn't sure yet where this would lead. As I hit send, a strange sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of the situation, no longer just reacting to the chaos Jessica had created. That evening, Jessica approached me again. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but I kept my expression neutral. "Talk about what?" I asked, crossing my arms. "About how you destroyed our marriage. About how you lied to me over and over again. Because I'm not sure there's anything left to say." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try. I'll do anything, I swear." I stared at her for a long moment. "Anything?" I asked, my tone sharp. "The problem, Jessica, is that you've already done everything. And now I have to decide if I can live with what's left." Her tears fell silently, but I turned away, heading upstairs once again. The weight of her words hung in the air, but they couldn't reach me anymore. I wasn't ready to forgive, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be. All I knew was that the distance between us was growing, and it might be impossible to bridge. A week passed, each day heavier than the last. The distance between Jessica and me became palpable, like a living thing that grew stronger with every silent meal and every night spent apart. I went through the motions, but inside, I was unraveling. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this up. One evening, I came home to find Jessica sitting in the living room, her suitcase by the door. My heart stopped for a moment as I tried to decipher what this meant. She stood as I entered, her face pale but determined. "I think we need space," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "I don't want to make things harder for you by staying here." Her words caught me off guard. I had expected her to fight harder, to cling to what little was left of us. But here she was, taking the first step toward what felt like the inevitable. I nodded slowly, trying to process the moment. "Where will you go?" "My sister's," she replied. "It's temporary. I want to give you time, Tom." Time. It was all she could offer now. Part of me wanted to argue, to tell her that leaving wouldn't fix anything. But another part of me, the part that was exhausted, broken, welcomed the idea. Maybe I did need space. Maybe we both did. She walked over to the suitcase and picked it up, her hands trembling. "I don't know how to make this right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'll do whatever it takes, even if it means stepping back." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I watched as she opened the door and stepped outside. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed through the empty house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That night, I sat in the quiet of the living room, staring at the spot where her suitcase had been. The weight of everything finally hit me all at once, and I broke down. For the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself cry, not out of anger, but out of grief. I wasn't just mourning the betrayal. I was mourning the life we'd built, the dreams we'd shared, the love I thought we had. By the time the tears stopped, I felt strangely lighter. The pain was still there, but something had shifted. I realized that I couldn't keep holding on to the past, to the person I thought Jessica was. It was time to let go. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told him to move forward with the divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. Jessica and I had reached the point of no return, and clinging to what was left would only cause more pain. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions, sadness, relief, and a faint glimmer of hope. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to think about the future, not the one I had planned with Jessica, but the one I could build for myself. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be mine. And that was enough.